stuff done. Ready to go? Yeah. Good evening, I'm Councillor Maureen Cleater, the Chairman of the Housing and Community Cohesion Policy Advisory Committee, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this meeting. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded on playback on the Council's YouTube channel. Will anyone else be recording the proceedings? As Councillor Mackay isn't here to reserve his right, I'm taking it's a no. I ask that so that people at the meeting will know if this will be happening. If the fire alarm sounds during the meeting, please remain seated and members of the Democratic Services team will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building if necessary. So there's now been a change in the running order. We have a lot of visiting members here who I know want to speak on items, so we will now take them in the following order. Item 16, item 10, and then 11, 12, 13, 14. And just for clarification, if you are a visiting member and would like to speak, could you make that known when I call you up later? So, are there any apologies? I've received them from Councillor Kadka. Are there any other apologies?
Councillor Parfitt.
Thank you. And do we have any substitute members?
Councillor Conyard for Councillor Kadka.
So that's, sorry, Councillor Forecast for Councillor Parfitt. Stop. So I intend to take item 16, comprehensive strategy for reducing violence against women and girls, progress proposals and pathways forward as an urgent item to allow members the opportunity to discuss the item before its presentation at Cabinet on the 18th of December, and an amended agenda was published today and copies have been provided. Just to say, although you are free to contribute today, that does not stop you from contributing at Cabinet. Are there any visiting members? If you could form a nice line, we'll get this done.
Councillor Jones, Boxy Downs Ward, I reserve my right to speak.
On which item?
All of them.
Thank you, Councillor Jones.
Councillor Sweetman from Barming Heath and Easton Ward. Thank you.
Are you wanting to speak on any items?
No, I don't want to, thank you.
Councillor Keeley, Coxheath and Farley Ward, I reserve my right to speak on all items. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Cooch, I'd like to speak on item 16, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Wilkinson, item 16.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Thompson speak for item 16, please.
Thank you very much. Are there any disclosures by members or officers? No. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of lobbying? No. to consider whether any items should be taken in private because of the possible disclosure of exempt information. I move that all items be taken in public. However, members may wish to discuss the information contained within the exempt appendix, item 15, exempt appendices to item 10 on the future sustainability of community larders. It will be necessary to move into closed session due to the likely disclosure of exempt information for the reasons specified having applied to public interest. With those provisos, is that agreed? Thank you very much. Minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of November 2024. Are there any comments on the accuracy of the minutes? These will have been circulated well in advance. No? Okay. As there are none, I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of September 2024 be approved as a correct record and signed. Is that agreed? Thank you. I'll sign those at the end. Yeah. Item 9. Are there any comments on the forward plan, or do the Cabinet members wish to make any comments? I therefore move that the forward plan be noted. Is that agreed? So we're now on to item 16. I'm not going to say the whole wording of the title because it's like a mile long. The notice of the motion has been referred to the committee from full council on Wednesday the 4th of December. This policy advisory committee is able to recommend that to Cabinet to adopt the motion with amendments, or take no further action. It will be introduced by Councillor Nagy, the Cabinet Member for Community, Cohesion and Safety, and the officers present also will be Martin James, Community and Strategic Partnership Manager. Yeah. Oh, sorry. And Angela Woodhouse, who also would like to speak on this. And we're going to take visitor members first. No, the introduction first, then this. Yeah. So how we'll play this is Councillor Nagy will do the introduction, and then we can take visiting members. Yeah. Councillor Nagy.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to let Martin, as senior officer on this, do this one. Thank you.
Good evening, members. On behalf of the portfolio holder, I'm grateful for the opportunity to introduce this important report on reducing violence against women and girls. First of all, I want to extend thanks to Councillor Jenkins Baldock for bringing this crucial motion forward. Violence against women and girls is a serious issue that affects many lives. The tragic murders of Sarah Everard and PCSO Julia James have not only deeply impacted us here in Kent, but also resonated across the nation, driving change in strategies to tackle this issue. These incidents, among others, have driven significant changes in how we approach violence against women and girls, which is now at the forefront of the work of the Safer May Zone Partnership. Collaboration has been a key part of our efforts. While the report details some of the work that's been done and continues to be done, it shouldn't seem like that is the end of the journey. There are still victims, and therefore there is still work to be done. Gender-based crime has been a prominent feature of the human existence, and our hope is that as each generation continues, these issues will become increasingly less prevalent. I have worked with the portfolio holder who supports the recommendations of the report, in that we should acknowledge that the work done so far has been important, but we should push ourselves to do more and ask for representatives across other departments to play their parts. The final recommendation recognises that whilst there are specific things that we can do as an authority, the real strength and possibility for change comes from collaboration, synergy in our partnerships. These recommendations will ensure that our actions to reduce violence against women and girls are well planned, supported and effectively implemented, leading to sustainable improvements in our community safety. While the report sets... repeat myself. That's it, sorry, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. James. I'll now take visiting members who wish to contribute.
Evening, everyone. Thank you for indulging me on this occasion. I wanted to come back to the pack as we didn't get an opportunity to speak last week, and I did have a full speech prepared. I also wanted to have an opportunity to thank Councillor Jenkins-Baldock for bringing the motion forward in the first place, but also to the officers in the Safer Maidstone Partnership for the work that they have been doing on this already over the last few years. When considering what to say on this subject, I actually decided that my personal experiences were both too personal but also, frankly, too unremarkable to share, which I think is an unfortunate testament to how normalised such violence has become. Instead, I actually sent a poll out to my friends, family, former classmates, members of my theatre group, etc. in the Maidstone area, asking a simple question: have you ever experienced physical or verbal abuse or harassment, whether on a night out, in public or in private? At the time that I was writing this, every single respondent answered yes. So that's 100% of the 52 women that chose to get back to me. And that's not just a humble brag about how many friends I have, it's just a stark reality of how many people this affects. I'm aware it's not a particularly scientific survey, but nor is it a particularly surprising result. However, I think it helps paint the picture that behind all the statistics in the original motion and all the figures that we receive, these are real people. However, at the same time, this angers me because I don't believe I should take humanising women in this way to realise that violence against women and girls is a crisis that we must all confront. It also reminds us of the reality for women in Maidstone. Many of them followed on from my poll to share stories of being catcalled whilst walking through town or feeling unsafe in poorly lit streets late at night. Even in last week in my ward, both incidents actually in Yalding, there was a man who pulled up to the bus stop and was harassing schoolgirls first thing in the morning, and then there was another girl who was harassed by a man on the bus taking inappropriate photos. So both of those instances just last week in my ward. This isn't the first time these sorts of things have happened, yet little is being done. These everyday experiences aren't just inconvenient, they're exhausting, frightening and unacceptable. I also wanted to have the opportunity to emphasise that the recommendations in this motion, especially developing a comprehensive VORG strategy, can create real change. I've had the privilege of previously working for the only local authority in the country with a dedicated VORG team, and I've seen firsthand how powerful collaboration between community partners, police, schools and businesses, etc. can be, and probably bus companies now as well for this area. True systemic change requires not only strategy but resources, and I wanted to say that I hope that we can prioritise these appropriately to support these vital initiatives. This isn't just a women's issue, it's a community issue for all of us. I urge my fellow members to recognise the urgency and necessity of this motion. Obviously it's moved to PAC now, but to take a stand for the safety, dignity and equality of women and girls in Maidstone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next visiting member.
Thank you, Chair. So obviously it's not my place as a bloke to pretend to have had the same experiences as women who've been subjected to various forms of violence and intimidation. Unfortunately, both Councillors Jenkins-Baldock and my wife, Councillor Wilkinson, were unable to attend due to prior commitments. So I'm just going to relay the points that they want to make. Before I do, though, I just wanted to express my dismay at the way the original motion was treated at full council. There were female councillors there, some quite new and some of whom will be present tonight, from various political groups who would have wanted to publicly and quite bravely share their personal experiences. and their perspective on violence against women and girls in the borough. They would have spent time preparing to do so, but of all the agenda items, this was the one that was sort of curtailed or truncated through a constitutional mechanism. I'm not going to make any individual criticisms because it's done now, but I'm sure we can all agree it's an incredibly bad look. In terms of the recommendations themselves in this report, they broadly align with what Councillor Jenkins-Baldock's motion states, though she has asked me to highlight a couple of points. So one is that we must include women's and girls' voices, particularly survivors of VAUG, in terms of plans to increase their safety, which again ties in with what was effectively the shutting down of women's voices at full council. Secondly, we need to do more to challenge and change men's and boys' attitudes and behaviour to avoid it happening in the first place. Obviously, the influence of people like Andrew Tate over easily manipulated young men is bad enough. Unfortunately, the fact that the President-elect of the United States holds more or less the same views makes the job even more difficult. And then just lastly, just something that Councillor Wilkinson, as in Councillor J Wilkinson, wanted me to share. So recommendation one's a bit self-congratulatory, but this is something that Councillor Greenan touched on at full council. The briefing note states that there's been a 9% reduction in incidents down to 3,703. Well, that's still a horrific number of incidents within the borough. Secondly, there's a viral video we can share to anyone who wants to see it, where a woman describes her experience of being spiked at a local bar. And if you look at the comments below it, there are a lot of lived experiences women share of spiking within Maidstone. And she says, so I'm glad it's not being swept under the carpet. Yes, things are being done to mitigate it, but a lot more work needs to be done to help keep women safe in Maidstone.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Councillor Sweetman, did you want to speak now? Councillor Kahili, do you want to speak? Yeah, please, come up.
Thank you, Chair. I actually wasn't going to speak, but sitting there listening to some of the things that have been said before you have your debate, I just wanted to really talk to the gentleman in this room, that it may seem something that you don't fully understand. It may seem something that you're excluded from. If you don't understand it, I suggest you do a couple of things, and they will be to speak to your wives, your girlfriends, your sisters, your mothers, your daughters, and ask them a few questions. Ask them if when they get out of their car at night, they automatically put their car keys between their fingers, walking 20 feet to their front door in case someone jumps out on them. Ask them how many times they've crossed the road because they think that the men behind them, are potentially going to attack them. Ask them if they've deliberately phoned somebody when they're walking alone. As I do, walking down to the Archbishop's Palace car park, I usually phone someone, be it my husband, a friend, or someone, and ask them if, even more shocking, they've pretended to do so because they feel so unsafe. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Jones, did you want to, or Councillor Sweetman? Yes.
Thank you. I wasn't actually going to speak to start with. I haven't got anything written, but most of it is on personal experiences. I'm a woman of age now, but it goes back to school and being in the classroom. The first time that boy undid my bra strap in class and I got sent out because I complained. Then later on he decided to attack me, and again I got sent out because it was my fault. I've seen flashes. I mean, one of the flashes I saw, the first time I saw a flasher, I didn't really understand what was going on. The second time, it affected me. It affected me greatly because I was frightened to go out and walking my dog like I normally did. I was about 14 at the time. I've suffered it in the workplace. When I was about 17, an older colleague, he used to push himself up against me. He used to say things. I did actually challenge him in the end, and I've got the strength to tell him to stop doing it. I've had it from a boss who thought it was funny to say sexual innuendos to me because it embarrassed me, and then even to the point where I think another colleague was trying to groom me. I mean, obviously this was years ago. I think, yes, this is a really good motion. I think it's very important to understand and to teach young boys. I think it's important for young boys to understand, to respect women from a very early age, and hopefully then this won't continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Sweetman. Councillor Tonkin.
Good evening, Chair and members. It's a sober privilege to sit here today to address this important motion. I would like to add my voice to those thanking Councillor Jenkins-Baldock for bringing her motion last week. Much has changed in the world we have found ourselves in, that we are making for ourselves. As I grew up boy and brother to my younger sister, in my schooling there was no personal health, social education or holistic sex education or citizenship. But there was an active citizenship that kept a variously stern and understanding eye on public behaviour. A deference that, while not universal, tended to serve the dignity of women and girls. Now we have a richer school curriculum, but not so much of the decent public behaviour. Self-control has declined. I have lost count of the number of times my wife comes through the door at home up the Tunbridge Road to tell me that as she came home alone, somebody slowed their car, wound down the window and shouted at her as they passed by. How is she to know what may happen next as you approach a shadowy figure on the pavement coming in the opposite direction? In my career as a teacher, for several decades I have attempted to grapple with the over-assertive group mentality of teenage boys and grieved over the loss of innocence of the teenage girls who I have had in my company as a professional, who tell me that they think twice about their route home from school, clutching at the lapels of their coats and blazers as they pass strangers coming in the opposite direction. My sister and I both chose to work with children, but our lives have otherwise been somewhat different. Hers marked at times by the hint of or threat of violence, mine not so much, as Hilary Jenkins-Baldock's motion intimates. There are some positive steps, and I would like to comment on these. As a new councillor, I was able to avail myself of the Prevent and Serious Organised Crime Awareness training that we were made aware of in September. Amongst the accounts, anecdotes and insights into the lived experience of more than half of the time women and girls in Kent, there were many accounts of trauma, which I will not recount. There were small opportunities, even in those accounts, to strengthen county links to the roles of our borough councillors, which we were able to do. There is much else we can do in partnership, and the actions in this motion indicate some steps that we can further progress. Some of them are already being done. There is much to be said for awareness, for consciousness raising, for naming things as they are. It was my privilege to proof this article, the domestic violence article in the last Borough Insight magazine. It was warmly welcomed, a very sober and excellent contribution to community safety, and it is very good to see that in our recent magazine. The Purple Sunflower campaign was well supported. It shows the importance of awareness raising and maintenance of awareness. These things are not futile, and they apply to all of us regardless of our gender, inclusive of our gender. It was also sober news to read on my community voice recently that plainclothes police patrolled our high street and that female officers were abused, and the persons responsible were apprehended. We are grateful to our partners for this unfortunately necessary good work. My economic development brief as Cabinet member recently has brought me into conversations with officers about our nighttime economy and the safety of women using our local pubs, clubs, the entertainment offerings, and those who seek a safe taxi trip home. I ought not to need to say safe, but I just did. Assisted by our volunteers, including our street pastors and such like. I note the adverts in the High Street for the Ask for Angela campaign, which gives people a means of sounding the alarm. I would like to quietly observe that in a recent Cabinet meeting, we reviewed the repair and upgrade of lighting on the riverbank at Watman Park, and I would like to point out that we were more exercised about the implications of that for the safety of women and girls going about their daily business than we were about the ecological risks of the wrong sort of LEDs. Members may approve of these observations of things that members and the work of this council has carried out and is thoughtful about to this point. Of course, they are not enough. If one part of the body suffers, all the parts suffer with it, and I'm here in solidarity with you all, as Councillor Jenkins-Baldock has pointed out. So this is all part of our good neighbourliness, which we will need tomorrow, if not this evening. In solidarity, we will go that step further to maintain awareness and to put in place the actions which have been put in the motion and other things which I'm sure people will have had chance to volunteer this evening. I look forward to joining all of you in making Maidstone a place where women and girls can thrive. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much to all the visiting members for their contributions. I have got some comments to make myself, but I will open it up to the councillors here. So, okay, Councillor Rodswell, then Councillor Millen.
I'm glad our council will be taking an active stance in preventing violence against women and girls within our community. It's a stance that it's not about words or speeches, but it's about implementation and it's about action. And before any meaningful action can take place, there has to be dialogue, debate, challenge, listening to each other, and self-reflection. And these are all human givens that women who have endured abuse don't get. And I think as a council, you know, we really need to be leading by example. This is why, by not having the debate last time, it didn't allow the voices. And also there was an assumption that everyone agrees. But there could have been people that might say, well, what about men and what about domestic abuse? What about the hidden shame that men have to go through? Why can't it be a broader motion? And it would have been really good to have had a really honest and open discussion, because you can guarantee that a community are going to be asking the exact same questions. And as a council, to model that we can listen to each other and reflect and not just assume that everyone agrees. Because how did we know that everyone agrees? We can't make that assumption. I've been a counsellor in a women's refuge for many years, and I have supported local girls who have been groomed and coerced and sexually exploited. And in my current role as a therapist and a designated safeguarding lead, I'm supporting local women and children traumatised by the devastating impact of harassment, stalking, rape, sexual abuse, coercive control and honour-based abuse, much of which falls under the umbrella of domestic abuse, which permeates so many relationships in our town as nationally. And an example of this being the teenage boys I support. They've been growing up in households where abuse to their mothers has been so normalised that they have, in many instances, are replicating the same behaviours in their own relationships. So, you know, it is so important that this is not just about safeguarding, but it's about education and it's about supporting our young people and those held beliefs that we grow up with and the unconscious biases that we might have. And I strongly believe that as individuals, as a community, as a council, we all have a duty of care in challenging these held beliefs, these unconscious bias, the entitlement and the gender inequalities which underpin the abuse my clients have to endure. And one of the things I had wanted to highlight last week about this excellent motion is that it's not just about embedding the safeguarding measures throughout our community, but it seeks white ribbon accreditation. And that joins many other councils in actively committing to the prevention of harassment and abuse and of violence towards women by addressing these inequalities, the assumptions and the held beliefs that perpetuate abuse in our society. And it also ensures that men as well as women are part of the solution. I only wish such an initiative had been in place when I was a younger woman and I held a spiked drink in my hand.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rodwell. Councillor Millen.
Thank you. I just want to also thank everyone who's spoken today, and big thanks to Hilary and Donna for even starting this, because it was really well researched, it was really well put together, and it should have had more time and consideration than it was given for all their hard work. And they're not here tonight, but thank you, Donna and Hilary, if you are watching. I wasn't actually going to speak, so I want to try and keep it short rather than go off on a tangent, but like the report even has in here, my area of FANT is one of the highest in the borough, and I speak from experience because just in the last couple of weeks I had a resident of mine contact me and question whether she should even report it, because you're just so dismissive of the kinds of things that happen to you. They're so normal, you think, it happens all the time, don't bother reporting it. And when she asked me for advice, I said, yeah, you can report it on the non-emergency, do it here, like, I think it is important to report it. And then the more, after I'd messaged her back, the more I thought about it, I thought, wait, no, that's an emergency. It's a prowler. A man pulled up beside her thinking she was a young girl and tried to tempt her into his car. And it's like, that's a prowler. And as women, we just become so complacent to those kinds of threats that we just brush it off as unimportant. But then we also have, like, I can't remember, sorry, apologies, whoever brought up the Sarah Everard case. How can we trust our police, and what's the point in reporting if nothing's going to happen? And those bad apples are the ones that we're reporting it to. It's these kinds of things that are the problem. And I speak again from experience, because in the last week I've had to report verbal abuse from a male resident in my ward whilst I'm doing councillor duties. And I can guarantee every single councillor here who's had to leaflet and canvass who can't go on their own because they're not safe on their own. And we have to model the behaviour we want to see, and that includes not just saying, yeah, we agree women need to be protected. Listen to us. Just listen to us and take us seriously. That's it.
Councillor Dawes and then Councillor Forsh.
I'll make it very brief because everybody speak extremely well about these issues. I just wanted to have a little voice for the ones that I not heard, which is domestic abuse men. Because there's 1 in 10, and I've received a few in my office this year, and actually women can also create a huge amount of aggravations for men, coercive and controls and being violence. So yes, we need more educations about what it is to respect one another.
Councillor Forth.
As a mother of 2 daughters, I think this is wonderful. My daughter's in their 30s now, but I've had many sleepless nights worrying when they're in town, what time they're going to get back. And I won't stop worrying till we have safer streets and a safer environment. Just one question I had on the spiking. We have a sort of a May to November 2023 and 24. Why is there a gap?
Very good question, Councillor Forth. Thank you.
I don't have an answer to that other than to say they were the figures that were available on short notice, but when we bring further information, we'll provide more detailed information for
a sort of a gap of 5 months where we have...
yeah, I totally agree. And I think that's largely when they're looking at a workable period. Obviously, we don't have the complete data, but we can make sure that that's addressed in further reports.
So just a few comments from the chair before I ask if anyone wants to propose and second. We are where we are following the full council meeting. I think we've learned that the optics weren't good. I don't think that it was done maliciously. I don't think that at all. And I know that the mayor has contacted the mover and seconder of the motion. One of the issues, and I think you've touched on it a bit, it's reported incidents. And what happens is women give up reporting stuff because nothing changes. I'm 67. I was 16 when I was attacked. I was 17 when I was attacked. I was 30 odd when I was, I mean, you know, I'm sure I didn't have a hat on saying, please attack this woman. But it was just the incidents that I found myself in. I used to work in France, and I know the police came and took our CCTV tapes, discs away because there was a serious assault there. I'm old enough to remember when the young woman was murdered going up the Sutton Road and was left dying in somebody's garden. Although a lot is being put on the town centre, it happens in rural areas as well. And it's even more hidden domestic abuse there because people have less chance to engage. I was with Councillor Thompson, I've been with Councillor Wilkinson when I've had to intervene where women were being attacked outside this building after a council meeting. So there is a lot of work to do. I think one of the things I would say is it's really good having working groups, but we need to have that lived experience. It's no use saying that, you know, we can have all this joint working, but the reality is the youth offending budget is being cut. The youth services budget has been cut. You know, and all those prevention work has been cut. So my plea would be, when we're having all this joint working, please have lived experiences. And someone mentioned Andrew Tate. Quite clearly, it's too late going into secondary schools because actually we need to educate young girls and young boys what a healthy relationship is. And believe me, people have choices. I have no photograph of my maternal grandmother, and I never knew why. I thought, oh, maybe it got lost, you know, during the war in the bombing. Until a funeral, an older person's funeral in my family. And the answer was, oh, there was no photographs because there wasn't a day when she didn't have a split lip or a black eye. And that shocked me because I was brought up in a single parent family by my father, who taught that no man raises his hand to you. You be an assertive woman. You stand up for yourself. And if anyone ever does anything to you, you come and get me. Now, that was in the 1970s. And I wouldn't like to say what my father did when he turned up in court for the bloke who attacked me, but let's just say it took 4 police officers to restrain him and leave it at that. But what he showed is, even if you grow up in a violent family, you have a choice. You choose to be like the abuser in your family, or you get support and learn not to be. My worry is young teenage girls see it as the norm to have that sort of behaviours done to them, and young boys are seeing this as the norm. So we're talking about 12, 13-year-olds, and that's why I think actually we need to be in the primary schools. So quite how we do that, I think that must be part of this policy. It's going to need to be working with our KCC colleagues, because obviously, and the academies, and the church schools. It's a big job, but just because it's a big job, we shouldn't start it. And, you know, from little acorns, mighty trees grow. So thank everyone for their contributions. And I've just remembered, Councillor Dawes, the one thing I wanted to say, and to you, Councillor Rodwell, is the vulnerable women. They are particularly targeted by abusive relationships. It takes many forms: emotional, financial, sexual and physical abuse. And again, that's something we're going to have to work across organisations with. Fair play to Ken Police, they're a white ribbon accredited organisation, and I can't say how I know, but I do volunteer work once a month, and I know from what I see that actually they are dealing with stuff, and you'd be surprised the number of people they are dealing with, but it's just the tip of the iceberg. And we need to teach people that they need to understand that actually they're worth more than that. And also understand that it doesn't matter what your background is. You could be poor, you could be rich, you could be in any political party. It could affect you. I would like to thank everyone for a most constructive and illuminating debate on this. I think it was right that we had it, and I would look for a proposer and a seconder, please. Councillor Conyard. Second, Councillor Dawes. Is that agreed? Refer it to Cabinet? Agreed. Does any of the officers want to just wrap up and feedback anything?
Yeah, if I may, Chair, thank you. Really, I'd just like to say thank you to everyone who spoke tonight. I completely understand where people are coming from, and it's quite moving. The thing I've really taken on board is the importance of the lived experience and having that voice in the room. So that's something we'll take away as officers. And I know with the Cabinet going forward, they're very keen on having more engagement in a meaningful way. So we will pick that up and wrap it into the work that's going on. But yeah, thank you for your time and appreciate everyone who contributed. It's not an easy topic, and it was nice to hear such a respectful debate. So thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Martin, have you got any feedback you want to give, or has Angela said it all for you?
No, I think Angela summed it up very well. As a male ambassador for this area of work, it's something that there are things that I've heard today that I've heard too many times before. There are things that we're talking about here that we actively try and do, and we beat that drum as hard as we can. There needs to be more drummers, and whether that's staff or just more voices, but as you quite rightly said, there's work for everybody to do on this, not just us.
Thank you, Martin. I think the other thing I would just quickly say, because I'm glad this has been proposed, seconded and passed, is that we need to go where they are sometimes, not them come to us. We've got to reach out and be where they are. So I know Councillor Dawes, with Madam, your voluntary work there. I know that others within the community go out and hear these things, and I think it's how we do that and how we make that happen. So thank you for a very constructive debate. Item 10, sustainability of the community larders. This will be introduced by Councillor Nagy, the Cabinet Member for Community Cohesion and Safety, and also present we have Anna Collier and Orla Sweeney. I know this is change over time. And thank you very much to the visiting councillors who came and contributed. We do appreciate that. I can see a mass exodus of visiting members, so I take it we have no one wanting to speak on this. So we can... You're not a visiting member. I said visiting member. Right, Councillor Nagy, do you want to open up the discussion?
Thank you, Chairman. This evening's report is to consider the options for the future sustainability of the community larders. Maidstone Borough Council began work in 2021 to address health inequalities in its most deprived communities. Through this work, it was identified that food insecurity was one of the biggest concerns for residents. Grant funding was secured from the West Kent Health and Care Partnership Health Inequalities Programme, and the Shepway Community Larder opened in December 2022. This was followed by Park Wood Larder in July 2023. In September 2023, a third community larder was opened at Trinity, utilising government funding from the Household Support Fund. The larders were designed to provide a long-term, sustainable approach to addressing food insecurity and to contribute positively to reducing health inequalities. The wider benefits of the larders have been to reduce food waste and to provide opportunities for volunteering. Making the larders sustainable has been a priority of the project. A one-off sum was allocated for this purpose in the 2024 and 25 budget. As detailed in the report, a supplier engagement was conducted, seeking expressions of interest from local charities and community-interested companies. Unfortunately, there was two organisations who showed interest at stage one in the procurement process, but one withdrew from the process. The council investigated other possible options. We were introduced to the bread and butter thing, an organisation with an established close links with supermarkets, factories and farms to secure and redistribute surplus food, and food that often ends up going to waste because it's wrongly labelled or there's too much of it. In March 2024, the council sought to authorise to single source the bread and butter thing to run the Maidstone community larders. We delayed moving forward with the bread and butter thing because a local organisation approached the council and were interested in taking on the community larders. However, they also withdrew their offer. This leaves us with three options: close the larders, work with the bread and butter thing, or to deliver the larders in-house, which is not currently budgeted for. Grant funding has ended, but there is enough money remaining for the larders to continue until the end of the financial year. I'm happy to take any questions, and officers are also available to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I know that Councillor Conyard has indicated to speak, but before we do, is anyone going to be wanting to ask questions on the yellow papers? Yes, okay. So I shall now we are now going to enter into part 2. I move that the public be excluded from the meeting for item 15, exempt dependencies, to item 10, future sustainability of the community larder, due to the likely disclosure of exempt information for the reason specified, having applied the public interest test. Is that seconded? Yeah. Is that agreed? Yeah. We'll look to a maximum of 15 minutes, but if we get back earlier, that would be great. Thank you. Just going to wait till we do the technological stuff. So the report asks the committee to consider the following recommendations. The options for the future sustainability of the community larders be considered, and a one-off investment in the bread and butter thing to ensure sustainable larder provision as outlined in the papers exempt papers be agreed. Is there any amendments to that? Or as going to Cabinet, are people happy for that to go to Cabinet?
I'm sorry, I saw there was about 3 different options.
No, there's the...
There was available options 3.1, 3.2 and 3.3, and available preferred options 4.1, 4.2 and 4.3. Page 22.
Oh, it's page 13 is the options, isn't it, in the report? Yeah, it's page 13. They're the 2 options. I mean, I'll be quite...
So, shall I explain?
Yeah, explain to it.
There's available options given on page 21, and then there's recommendations of the report which are made on 13. Yeah. So that's the ones that are being moved by the report author, unless someone wants to suggest an alternative, which is why the available options there.
That's why I've asked, has anyone got any amendments which can, you know, any additions? You don't have to put an amendment. We can go to Cabinet and discuss it there, but...
No, I'd like to make an amendment then.
Sorry, so you'll need a seconder for the amendment as well. So when you propose the amendment,
okay,
can you speak quite slowly because Cassie's got to type it?
Mm-hmm. So I'd like the option 1 of the future and sustainability of the community larder to be kept in-house for the next year, and that an investment of a one-off of better things be considered for the future sustainability of food provision in Maidstone. That works, yeah? I thought I only had the choice between 1 and 2 in page 13.
So you want to...
Yeah, that's the preferred option that's being recommended.
Okay. Right, it is the option that's... Yeah, we've got clarification now. Do we... I mean, we've all expressed what concerns we do have, and I think you need to take that on board. Would welcome for elected members to at least, I mean, even if it's an online meeting, just to, you know, see how the bread and butter people work and how, and, you know, maybe have a bit of a discussion around that. I don't think that needs to be amended. I think that's a suggestion that I would hope that officers would take on, because I think this is really important we get this right in the current economic climate, and I think it would be quite useful to hear from them.
Yeah, which one's proposed?
No, I think we can... So, do I have a proposer? I'm happy to propose it from the chair, but I would like additional... Sorry, Councillor Conyard.
So, can I confirm your request that you are proposing that the motion 3.2, the preferred route, is taken, but with the addendum that won't need amendment of the actual part, that further provision and information is given to members over the bread and butter thing, and that the Cabinet members have heard our concerns whilst in private session, and would ask them very kindly to take those on board when they have their discussions in the future. If that's the case, I'm happy to propose.
Now you're confusing me again, because we're talking about 3.2 and not 4.1.
Well, we'll take a vote and you can vote against if you... The proposal is on page 13, which is the options for the future sustainability of the community larders be considered, a one-off investment in the bread and butter thing to ensure a sustainable larder provision, as outlined in exempt item 3, be agreed with, as Councillor Conyard said, you said it much better than me. I mean, we can add it to point 2. I think that would be useful, wouldn't it? Add it. Can you give your wording at the end of point 2? Sorry.
Goodness, I cannot remember what I said. I believe it was on with if the comments could be taken on board that we heard in private session very kindly, and the Cabinet members can take those on board, and obviously the request of further information about the bread and butter thing that was also requested in private session.
I don't think it's anything that we're going to say no, it's just that we need to know more. It would be useful to have that information. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Sorry, Ola. Sorry, Anna.
Problem at all. It was a good discussion. Thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you. And Councillor Nagy, thank you for your attendance.
Thank you very much.
And give my apologies to the British Legion.
I will. And Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Everyone, you can tell I've been in London 2 days running. My brain fog is really bad today. Item 11, which is Homelessness Rough Sleeping Action Plan 2024 to 2029. The recommendation is on page 28, and that's to be introduced by Councillor Wales, the Cabinet Member for Housing and Homelessness, and we've also got John Littlemore, Head of Housing and Regulatory Services. We have no visiting members, so over to you, Councillor Wales. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. So this action plan builds on the 4 priorities as agreed by Cabinet in March 24 for the new homeless and rough sleeping strategy 24 to 29. These priorities continue on from the previous strategy 2019 to 24, and after much consultation with staff, stakeholders and residents, it was felt they should continue. The 4 priorities are, as you have seen in the report: 1, homelessness prevention; 2, to provide accommodation; 3, to work alongside vulnerable people; and 4, to support rough sleepers. The action plan seeks to solidify our aim to provide good quality housing and support options for those in our local community who are homeless or in unsuitable accommodation. The range of interventions created demonstrates the Council's commitment to ending the cycle of homelessness in Maidstone. Interventions include, but are not limited to, the expansion of the One View system, predictive analytics models seeking to prevent homelessness, provision of good quality supported accommodation for rough sleepers, those fleeing domestic abuse and young people, good partnership working with other agencies to provide robust response to those with challenging housing needs, trying to reduce the number of households in temporary accommodation and increase the flow out in order to minimise temporary accommodation stays, and working with stakeholders, including the voluntary and third sector, to provide a holistic approach to the needs of homeless people. I think there's things in the report that could be strengthened around that area, with the voluntary and community sector in particular doing rather more to help in the prevention side of the agenda, particularly with rough sleepers. So quite often rough sleepers are sort of terrified of someone from the council coming along to speak to them. Position people in authority can cause difficulties for them. But if it's someone from the community that they can respect, someone from the whatever community group, that might have more effect on them. Having been on the rough sleep account a couple of weeks ago, as a number of colleagues were, numbers have gone up from 6 last year to 12 this year. On the wettest night of the year, it was quite a number. It's quite a shocking find, really, to still find. And one gentleman that the leader of the council found was on his first night of rough sleeping, having been thrown out by his landlord from his flat. He had a month's notice. We don't know why it took 29 days before he did something about it, and that's the trouble. So there's all sorts of issues wrapped up in this, and we need sort of a multi-layered, multi-agency approach to deal with it. There's also something I'd like your input on, and that's on targets and measuring the effect of this, because there are dates in there, most of which are ongoing, but I think we need to be finding ways of actually identifying it, not necessarily in terms of numbers, but in percentages or something, just some way of identifying that we are actually moving forwards. And I'd like your input and some ideas and thoughts that we might be able to achieve that. Grateful that John Littlemore is here to answer some of the more technical questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wales, for that really good outline, and obviously the issue with homelessness, etc., is it's always a movable feast at the moment. It doesn't matter what council you're with. Has anyone got any questions or needs any clarification on this matter? Councillor Dawes?
Yeah, I welcome the new count of homeless in the wettest day of the year this year, which actually doubled from last year. Also, originally homeless, they try their best not to be outside, so they would do a lot of sofa surfing if they know that the night is extremely raining, and friends will have compassion on those nights, so you haven't find all the homeless in Maidstone, especially when knowing that the homeless shelter, the winter shelter run by the churches last year, had a subscription of over 100 homeless, and they had only 48 beds to provide in churches. That is 12 is not the numbers of homeless in Maidstone. I hope it's clear.
Thank you for that contribution. I suppose one of my questions is, you talked about the voluntary sector and that. My big concern is the number of people with either drug and alcohol or mental health issues. And part of the problem, and it's a throwback to a number of years ago, that Maidstone was the place where if you came out of prison, you came to find accommodation, but people are being released from prison with nowhere to go, no services for them, which again, it's back to the boroughs and districts are picking up all this slack from cuts from other services. Is there any work that's being done with other authorities? I know the people I used to work with who were homeless when I worked in mental health, which was a real worry, because it then has a knock-on effect around benefits, around, you know, getting people, simple things like getting GPs and that. So have we got any joint work going on with sort of county probation? That's a whole other issue with some of the accommodation they put people in who maybe shouldn't be there because of their diagnosis. It's not healthy for them. But are we doing any work with that, John?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we are on many levels. So you may or may not be aware that we host the only approved premises that Kent Probation have in Kent. So there's only one approved premises, and it's in Maidstone. So we naturally have a good liaison with the probation service. Sometimes that dips and ways depending on who the personalities are that you're dealing with, but we try our utmost to have a consistent approach to that. Services like the probation service are under a statutory duty to refer people to us at the point that they know they're going to be homeless. So we've made that route as smooth as possible so that we can engage with people. To pick up the point that was made earlier, being able to engage people at the earliest point is key to be able to prevent them ending up on the street. So yeah, we'd certainly do that. We also work with across Kent through Kent Housing Group on a number of these issues. So we are lobbying very hard with the Integrated Care Partnership at the moment to pick up some of the points you've made about people with complex needs and how we can deliver those services in, as we've heard, a very challenging financial environment for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Littlemore. Has anyone got any contributions they wish to make? Sorry, Councillor Oliver.
Can I, thank you. Can I just pick up on the KPI that you're having problems with? Your performance indicator that you're trying to narrow down on. What is that metric that you're having trouble with? You mentioned at the beginning that you were having problems deciding on the metric.
So really how to work out what metrics we need to have in there, really. I haven't taken this up with officers yet, but I think we need to have some sort of metrics to see if the policy is working. Otherwise, do we need to change it or what? So, but I'm not quite sure how we go about that, really, because it is so much in, well, as Councillor Dawson says, we found 12, but who knows how many had gone to A&E for the night or to McDonald's because it was such a filthy night. We don't know. And then there's no obvious way of counting them. We know how many literally we're paying for in temporary accommodation, and we can measure how many properties we've leased or bought to take people out of that. But again, more people are going in than are coming out, because more people are needing accommodation than hence you'll see from the financial reports later how much that's is over budget. So that's demonstrating the fact that we are needing to find other ways of cracking the problem, but how to measure how we're cracking that problem, I don't find an obvious answer to that. I'm just wondering if anybody else might have one, including Mr. Littlemore.
Just to make members aware that a dashboard is being developed that members will have access to. So data around the activities around homelessness will form part of that dashboard. You're quite right to highlight that sometimes it's difficult to put targets on these things. We've always shied away from putting a target, for example, on the number of households we accommodate in temporary accommodation, because if you say, right, we want our target at 150 families and no more, then that would look to, possibly, to the Ombudsman like you're gatekeeping, whereas that's not what we do. So we do report on the number because it's important that we're all aware in which the direction of travel is and the size of the problem that we're dealing with. But what we don't try to do, as I say, is put a target around it. We might want to put targets around things like preventing homelessness, where we want to obviously achieve a high as possible percentage as we can. So certainly happy to work with Cabinet Member and yourselves in how we develop that suite of information that then forms that dashboard that everybody will have access to. Thank you.
Thank you, that's very helpful. I did take on, I don't know who said about people ringing them up very last minute to say, because they go into avoidance. It is really, really difficult when people do that, whether you're an elected member or an officer. And the calls you get on a Friday afternoon, I'm like, well, when did you get the letter? Oh, I've had it for a few weeks. Oh, no, please don't. You need to seek help as soon as you get a letter, whatever it is, whether it's a notice seeking possession, whether it's a Section 21, although hopefully they'll be going soon. Excuse me. But yes, that's a plea to any of our thousands of observers who are watching this. Please don't leave it till lastminute.com. because it will happen. Councillor Wales.
I very much want to make this sort of like a call to arms, really. I don't think it's a problem that it just belongs to the council. It is a problem in society. We need to reframe this whole discussion and this whole argument around homes, around homelessness. I'm not calling it housing anymore. I'm calling it homes. We're building homes. We're not building houses. And just to illustrate, I had an email from a resident because of my housing brief, because there were some rough sleepers in tents in a field across from her front window. And the upshot of her email was that she wanted them moved. She wasn't emailing me to ask what are we doing to help them. She was emailing me from her warm, comfortable, damp-free home, asking me to move them into somebody else's fields and spoil their view. Now that's wrong. We need people in society to work with us to solve these problems. And that's my aim for the next however many years we get before we turn into a unitary authority.
I don't think you've got one naysayer on that. Last point, Councillor Wales, you're absolutely right. It's about what we can do to prevent that, and people aren't just bits of rubbish to be flown away. Right, Councillor Dawes, I'll make you the last one, and then we'll
I
go
have
to
got
the
some
recommendations.
questions, because there's some lovely acronyms in page 41. It referred to RS Mental Health Team. When I Google RSI, it goes for repetitive strain injury. It is not a mental health, it's a physical thing. So that's like, well, that's not helping me in understanding what a RSI mental health team is. So, yeah.
Yeah, apologies. I thought we'd got rid of all of those. RSI is the government title for the Rough Sleeper Initiative.
Thank you very much. There was some things about in page 40, involvement, awareness and implementation, engage technique for those who are or may be not neurodiverse. So which of your frontline service is helping neurodiverse people in when it comes to Trinity House?
Thank you. So what we've done is introduce training for all staff at Trinity. So any frontline member of staff that's going to be dealing with members of the public is able to receive that training, so that their awareness, as it says, and the techniques that they need to use should spread throughout the team. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A bit further on 3.7, you say improve response to acute homelessness due to dedicated assessment officer being unable to triage and support the team. So when you want to, when is this service would be implemented? At reception or at desk? Or after the reception at desk at Trinity House?
Sorry, I think that's embedded. So it's embedded in the team, in the triage support team. That's my reading of it. So you'd have the assessment officers would be embedded in the triage and support team. So the first time someone presents, you'll have an expert there who can do that.
That's correct, Chair. And I think that has already been done. Thank you.
Oh, and there's a lovely pilot on page 38, Rent in Advance Pilot Scheme. Would you like to explain to me what a Rent in Advance Pilot Scheme is? 2.5, page 38.
I would say that's deposit. Everyone has to pay a month's rent up front, usually.
Yes.
That's what that is? Yeah, that would be the norm. Even social housing does that. You have to give a month's rent up front, which is why we always have such a row with the DWP, because they pay UC or housing benefit in arrears. So that's about helping people to secure property because you give the rent up front, that month's rent. Is that helpful?
That's a great clarification. Thank you very much. And then you've got another acronym of HHSRS, and it's just a 2.5, just a bit further. I've got no idea what that is.
Can I just make a suggestion then? There seems to be a lot of acronyms in this. John, would you please very kindly get one of your team to just email along the list and what they mean, what they mean? We probably should know as councillors, but again, there is confusion sometimes. Would that be easier for everyone? Would they find that useful?
Yes, absolutely. Take that on board, Chair. I think the actual strategy does have a glossary in it. It's just so eventually the two documents will be tied together, so it make more sense. But that stands for the Housing Health Safety Rating System, which is the Housing Act system for assessing properties to make sure that they're free of any Category 1 hazards.
Okay, that's really great. That would make it easy, certainly for me, because I had to think twice, because certain things mean different things for different authorities. So on the basis of that, if we could have in the strategy, or when we get it, the actual useful glossary of terms. This report asks the Housing Community Cohesion Policy Advisory Committee that the Homeless and Rough Sleepers Action Plan 2024 to 29 be adopted by the Cabinet Member for Housing and Homelessness, taking into account your plea for help on the KPIs. Is that agreed? Thank you. The next item is item 12, and that's to be introduced by Adrian Lovegrove, Head of Finance, and that's the second quarter update report 2024 to 25. That is on pages 45 to 56, with two recommendations on 46, and I don't see anywhere you found some money down the back of the sofa, Adrian, so that's a disappointment, but...
Good evening, everyone. Update on the second quarter finance position. I'll give a little bit of context where Maidstone is overall, so you understand how this particular set of functions for this pack fit in. So overall, the council's looking at around a £449,000 overspend at the moment, a slight increase on the first quarter. Based on that position, internally they're doing some work to make sure that we reduce that where possible and certainly make sure it doesn't get worse. So the corporate leadership team are looking at recruitment to make sure they check all the current posts before they go out to advert to make sure they are really needed or whether we can delay any of that. And we've also given instructions to heads of service to consider minimising spend and certainly just focusing on essential items to hopefully manage with that overall position. This pack itself is got an overspend of about £450,000. You'll see on pages, and I think they're still the same because the extra paper was at the end. On page 54 starts to detail the sort of two key areas that are overspent, and they relate to the dog control and the temporary accommodation. Temporary accommodation was in there previously, has gone up. This is a mixture of a couple of things of unit costs are going up, so the functions we're using they are going up because they obviously want to recover their money and, if I'm honest, maybe taking a little bit of advantage. And then we've got a volume, just more people are in temporary accommodation. And I think one of the issues we've got is that's actually they're in there for slightly longer than we hoped, just because there is less housing around via the private sector and other routes for them to move into. So they're just being in the system for a little bit longer, unfortunately. And the dogs control is generally the dangerous dogs, so they are just, sadly it's been an ongoing issue where just the volume is higher and it's taking longer for us to, people to come and claim their dogs, and there's things like medical or vet fees as well and so forth, so sadly that's quite expensive. Capital, this is particularly quite a large slippage. think I need to remind people, though, of the capital programme, two things really. One, this was set back in sort of almost nearly a year ago when we started discussing this, and a lot of the money that goes in there is approval to business case, not approval to spend. Because a lot of the projects in there, we won't necessarily have all the detail, but there'll be things we would like to do and therefore progress. So things like the housing scheme, originally when it was 1,000 homes. At that time, they had a plan of what they'd like to do, but obviously some of those are subject to finding land, buying it, planning permission, all those things that have lots of things in it that could either delay or just change the timings. So some of that has come to roost. We may be a little bit optimistic maybe when we put it together. So we're going to reflect that in the next one. We've been working with Simon around that to make it more realistic. So that's where we are on that. Obviously happy to take any questions.
Councillor Dawes. Hello. I've got a few questions. It's on temporary accommodation on page 55. You have on quarter 3 and 4 1,850,000 twice. Is that because it's estimated, or is it what the cost was originally?
So what we think we're going to spend in those future quarters. So we, as all of these forecasts, when I talk about the overspend elsewhere, that is our projection for what we think will be at year end. So which is why they slightly change every quarter, because we either have a bit more intelligence, 3 months has gone past and so forth. So we are better view on how much it's going to cost.
Thank you. And you've got the yes, I read that one on behind on why the disability is in minus of 633, but you're expecting a grant that will cover it next year. So I've answered my own question on that one. And why there's no figures according to housing and homelessness? Is there just been a bit of a delay? Because it's all blank in that line. It's still page 55, capital budget. The all cabinet member for housing and homelessness, the approved budgets are carried forward. It's all blank.
The carry forward will be if we feel it's appropriate, there's deliberate slippage. So things where it's funded by grant, we don't slip, because if you don't spend the grant, you don't spend the grant, so there's no carry forward. So whether it's our own money or we're funding it by borrowing, we will carry it forward to continue the project.
Okay. Thank you. And there was two other blank boxes in page 55 about our property, community and commercials. In the column of actual to September 2024, it's blank there, and it's blank again in quarter 4. Is there any particular reasons?
Happy to. Yeah, so that's because there is no spend so far to date.
No spend.
And we don't think there's going to be spend in the future. All of those sort of top 3 items are very linked. So particularly where if you take some of the examples we're looking at, like at the moment, Maidstone East, often the ground floor is a commercial building. So they're actually quite linked together. So where one doesn't happen, the other won't happen either. So yeah, so because Maidstone East has taken a little bit longer, some of that has had no spend and so forth so far.
All right, thank you very much.
You know what I'm going to ask? Do we think the temporary accommodation variation is, how can I put it? Well, we know that, have we underestimated the overspend? Because we know there's going to be an overspend on temporary accommodation, and I just want to know if that's realistic. And just a quick question, because is the 60 regulatory services, is that what you were talking about, the dog yeah, I think we should have dog licenses back, but that's just me, you know. But yeah, are we being realistic with our projections for the homelessness and temporary accommodation? And because it doesn't matter what council you're in, it's difficult at the moment.
tricky one to answer because I just don't know. So depending what's happening out there, just with the financial climate we're in, we're doing our best. So obviously we're trying to invest in the accommodation as well to try and offset using the nightly paid, but just volumes seem to be slowly creeping back up a little bit. So I know John and his team try and do all the preventative stuff and so forth, but it just depends on what's happening in the market. So we sort of quite regularly look at it, see what's happening on the trends and so forth to keep an eye on it. So I think on both of those, and for next year's budget, we've made sure we put some extra money in to hopefully offset some of that and deal with that. And we're also, as part of that, also considering continuing to buy properties so we can put the people in our own accommodation as well. So hopefully making it at least cheaper, even if we can't deal with the volume issue.
Thank you, that's helpful. And hopefully we'll get some money off the government, because I understand there's some money floating round for that homelessness and homelessness.
And of course that relates us back to the previous item, doesn't it? Because if we get a bit of the prevention and the other stuff sorted out, then that will bring that figure down. The other advantage of using our own properties is that they tend to be an awful lot cheaper than private landlords, and an awful lot cleaner, an awful lot safer, and an awful lot less damp.
Sorry, my mic's gone funny, I can't switch it off, so I do apologise. Not that I need a mic with my dulcet tones, but there you go. I see no one else wanting to ask a question, so do we agree the recommendations to note the report? Agreed, thank you very much. And the next item 13 is the half-yearly KPI, Key Performance Indicators Update 2024 to 2025. They're on pages 57 to 73, and the two recommendations are on page 58. And Anna, you're back at the helm.
I'm back at the helm. So this is the new half-yearly performance update. So just to remind committee that you now have access to a KPI dashboard that has been developed in conjunction with officers and with members, and the dashboard is refreshed monthly where the monthly data exists, which allows you to view performance more regularly and challenge performance more regularly if needs be. So this report sets out the performance position against the 24-25 key performance indicators for the first half of the year, April to September, and it only features the KPIs that are relevant for this committee. In terms of performance of the 22 KPIs falling under this pack, 9 had a half-yearly target assigned to them, and of this 9, 7 met their targets, which is just under 78%. And of the 2 KPIs to miss their targets, both were missed by more than 10% margin. This is the delivery of new affordable homes, which remains under target due to a downturn in development activity, and this has also been reflected by colleagues in the planning service. And the second KPI to miss target is the percentage of repairs completed within 21 days on residential properties by the Maidstone accommodation team. As a result of poor performance in this area, the team have met with a contractor, and there's been an appointment of a new housing asset manager role, and as a result of this there is already more closer and focused contract management, and performance has already started to improve. So at the next half-yearly point, or at the annual year point, we should see performance improve in that area. As Councillor Kalita said, the recommendation is to note performance position at the end of the first half of 24-25 and the actions that have been taken, and obviously if required you can recommend any additional recommendations to improve performance or undertake any further analysis.
Thank you, Anna. I'm glad to see that we've put some mechanism in place regarding the percentage of repairs, because we can't very well come to these sort of things and complain about housing associations and private rented landlords if we're missing our targets by a country mile, because 47.31 is not great. And obviously we want to ensure, so I'm glad that some mechanisms have been put in place. I look forward to seeing that improving considerably. I suppose my other question is, were there any penalties for whichever contractor we had doing that work for not hitting targets? And maybe if we didn't have that, and we have contractors doing that work, do we plan to put it... Sorry, John, have I brought you back? Sorry, John. And if we haven't, do we intend to have something like that? Because that's pretty poor performance. I mean, if it was a staff member, you wouldn't be getting, your appraisal wouldn't be good, would it? So I'm glad we've taken action, but do we have a mechanism to stop it happening in the future, i.e. with contractors? Is there some sort of penalty we can impose?
The simple answer is yes, there is. But in fairness to our contractors, this isn't entirely reflective on them. Part of the issue has been, we're feeling our way back into being a landlord again. Part of the issue has been about our staff ensuring that they're updating the system promptly. So the repairs may well have been done on time. It's just that it's not been recorded on the system, so it's showing as being out of date. And that's part of why we think there'll be a marked improvement over the coming quarters, because that's the sort of thing that we're bending down on. Having said that, the new asset manager, together with our housing portfolio manager, have instigated regular meetings now, face-to-face with our contractors, just so that we can understand each other better and making sure that our needs of our residents are met. So, yeah, totally take on board what you're saying, but yes, I think we're on the right path. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Anna, it's all your fault for being quick off the mark with your key performance indicators. No, so that's really helpful. Thank you for putting that context around it, because I think sometimes we do need context around what figures are, but we await the next lot with interest. Has anyone got any questions, or are we going straight to just accepting? Yep. So we'll note that report. Everyone agreed? Agreed. Thank you. We're nearly there, folks. So item 14, fees and charges 25 to 26, pages 74 to 109, and there are 4 recommendations on page 75. And over to you, Adrian, because your name is next to this.
Cool, thank you everyone. So yeah, this is the yearly update on fees and charges this pack. It's part of the regular process, part of the budget, to make sure we're clear to what people are going to pay for a service. Some are statutory, some are discretionary, so we have some flexibility. We set out a policy in this about how we make sure we try and recover the right sort of fee where we have that discretion. So make sure it's cost recovery, but also competitive, because obviously there are some that, even though they are within, we will compete with the private sector or other companies as well. So we need to make sure that we get that sort of level of income. Overall, the fees for this area are fairly small in terms of the value, but it gives you an update on what those are, so happy to talk about those. I'd also need to mention that this also covers the budget survey. So as part of the resident survey, we do ask them about the budget and ask them for their views on what services they like, don't like, what they want more of, less of, and those sort of things. And that, as part of this, gives you a quick update on those. And so the report sort of picks up on the key services that they are supportive of, whether they're statutory or not. And obviously that's being used partly internally as part of setting the budget to get a view on what people would be happy to spend more on or maybe spend less on. But happy to take any questions.
Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Fort.
So as far as this committee is concerned, we are only looking at this Appendix A, which is quite a small area. never knew that we were responsible for stray dogs. I thought that was the RSPCA or one of those.
No, it's a hangover from one of the old pieces of legislation that a local authority is responsible for collecting and homing stray dogs. And the problem is that there aren't many organisations that want to provide that service, particularly if you imagine some of the types of dogs now that are banned and all the rest of it, and rehoming dogs is very difficult. So you're faced with one end of the spectrum. As a local authority, we could choose to destroy the dogs after a certain period of time, or as a local authority, you can do your best to try and rehome them. That takes longer to do, costs more, and that's why you've seen in the other budget report there's a overspend there, because part of the problem is we take that end of the approach where historically Maidstone has sought to rehome stray dogs. But yes, it is the district council that's that responsibility, not the RSPCA, not the police.
Councillor Dawes.
I just noticed that on the collection charges after midnight and out of office for dogs, there's zero for 2025, 2026. So you're not proposing an increase, or it's just not going to be possible to have the dogs collected out of hours? I don't get it. Maybe it should increase like all the other prices?
So I think all we're doing is saying that one is, as a fee, is being taken away. The little note does confirm that it's being covered by the other fees above, which is partly why they've gone up. So it's still a service we provide, but it would, to simplify the fee charge mechanism, we're going as a more simplified version.
So you wouldn't justify to make an extra charge for the dogs if they had to be collected at night or out of hours?
It's in the second one because it says 4 p.m. to 8 a.m. in the morning, so that's anything after midnight. So, yeah. No, so after midnight means basically that line will be taken out next year. Yeah.
To be honest, our preferred approach now is to actually issue a penalty notice rather than try and recover the cost of boarding.
Yeah.
That's proved to be more effective.
Yeah. Thank you. Other questions, points? Okay, thank you. Do we agree to note the reports and the recommendations contained on page 75? Agreed. And you will be glad to know that was the last item, probably the longest one we've had in a long while of this pack, but thank you very much to all the councillors and to the officers for attending. You all right, Councillor Wales? Don't depress me. And safe journey home, everyone. Take care.